what's the deal with Lamar's contract now that we are, let me get this straight, about 12 days away from the start of the season and this being put on the back burner if it doesn't happen?
Well, it's a complicated deal to do. Lamar has shed via via some Twitter comments that, where things stand in terms of they haven't offered a fully guaranteed contract to him, up at the level that he's been looking for. So, yeah, at some point you would think this could go all the way up till Saturday. They definitely would like to get a deal done. Lamar on some level has to want to get a deal done, but, they've been unwilling to take anything less than the level of contract that, Deshaun Watson got. So it's, again, this will go all the way down to the wire. It's a big bet by Lamar, but remember, he's also making a lot more money this year than he was last year. So to the extent that he's taken this risk on himself, the real risk was last year playing for like $2 million. This year playing for, substantially more than that is, somewhat less of a risk. But certainly if you're leaving that type of money on the table, it's a big gamble going forward.
So, okay, there's a couple things here on that front. So the Deshaun Watson contract, where he gets every dollar guaranteed with, 24 plus civil lawsuits hanging over his head, that contract that the Browns gave Watson, the Cardinals get a contract signed with their guy, Kyler Murray, and it doesn't have every dollar guaranteed like Watson's. So the Cardinals were able to get through signing their guy with Watson's contract not blowing the whole thing up. And the Ravens now are the ones caught in the trap of the Watson contract, is what you're saying right now?
Correct. And every team that had a quarterback contract coming up knew when that deal got done that this could be a massive problem going forward. That was the reality of it, was that this could be a real problem for other teams to get deals done. The Kyler contract is a little different because if you just look at the nuts and bolts of his deal, it's a strong deal for Kyler Murray because he didn't have leverage. He was due like $5 million this season. What was he going to do? He could sit out. He could cause a stink, but ultimately there was only so much they could do. With Deshaun, and even Lamar Jackson, he's entering his fifth-year option year, and, they could tag him twice. So he does not have necessarily the highest amount of leverage. Deshaun Watson, very serious allegations of sexual misconduct, uncertainty about him being suspended this year. But when he became available, as one league executive put it to me at the time, that wasn't a trade. That was free agency. He had 4 or 5 teams bidding against each other. The Browns at one point were told, you're out. They got back in by coming up with that contract. So again, regardless of what was going on and serious allegations off the field, from a football perspective, Deshaun Watson had a virtually unprecedented level of leverage in the negotiation. It's the only reason that deal gets done. There are a lot of teams that are still mad at the Browns about that deal. And, look, even within the division, not just Lamar Jackson, but you can bet when Joe Burrow is coming up on a new contract and he'll be eligible after this season, his agent is going to want a fully guaranteed contract. And the question then becomes, at some point, number one, do the rules change? Does the funding rule change so that owners don't have to start putting $200 million in escrow to fund these contracts? Or two, is there a push among the agents then that, okay, if you're not going to do a fully guaranteed 5 or 6-year deal, we want to do a fully guaranteed, let's say, 3-year deal and say we're not going to sign for anything beyond that. In other words, historically, teams have done these, big guarantees in year one, a lot of money up front, but then basically bought up future years 4, 5, 6 that aren't guaranteed. You've seen it in the receiver market that all the top receivers right now are getting 3-year deals, and that comes down to individual contract precedent. If teams are not going to buy into the Browns as a precedent on a fully guaranteed 5-year deal, you could certainly see an environment where the agents start saying, that's fine, but we're not taking any non-guaranteed money on this deal. Let's start talking about a 3-year extension. And we'd have to see whether that's the way the quarterback market goes as the receiver.
Wow, because next up is Burrow and Herbert, which is part of the reason why I think the Bengals finally decided to sell a naming right to their stadium. So that's coming up after this playing season. But for the here and now, Lamar Jackson, the Deshaun Watson contract is, in fact, screwing up what the Ravens are trying to do with their guy. And I'm not saying that Lamar's wrong for taking this stance. So all said and done, did Kyler do the Cardinals a favor not having this stance? Like, because the Cardinals could have been first up on that train that the Ravens are driving and riding on right now.
Right. But again, Kyler had, think about this. Okay, if you're Kyler, like, what do you do? $5 million this year, fifth-year option in 2023, 2 tags beyond that. That's 4 years of team control. So for Kyler, at some point, it's you take this deal that gives you this massive raise. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I want to say he went from like making $5 million this year to $30 million this year, and it's like $90 or $100 million over 3 years. Like, you're starting the money train rolling now. And by the time you get 3 or 4 years into that deal, they're probably looking to do a new deal, as opposed to you trying to play out this year, potentially holding out half the season, then playing next year. You know, you would have to go so far down the line. That's why nobody was able to replicate what Kirk Cousins did. He got 3 years, $84 million, fully guaranteed from the Vikings. That was that shorter term, fully guaranteed deal. Nobody was able to replicate that, but nobody did what Cousins did, which was play out his rookie contract as a 4th-round pick, so he didn't have the 5th-year option, which ends up being an advantage, gets tagged once, plays through that, he's going to get tagged again. Only because of that is he able to get to the market. Lamar could do the same thing, but because he was a first-round pick, you're talking about 7 years, presuming that they tag him twice. So 7 years total in his career, 2 more seasons beyond this one before you would have that type of leverage. That's why Deshaun Watson, again, had the football leverage to get that contract done, because everyone knew, okay, this guy is essentially a free agent. The Texans are moving on from him. We all know it's going to be 3 first-round picks and more. Now you are just bidding with the contracts. And how did the Cleveland Browns ultimately get him? Yes, Deshaun Watson liked what he heard from Jimmy Haslam. He liked what he heard from the coaching staff. He had weapons in Cleveland to work with, a really good defense there. But it's money. Money's a huge part of it. They were willing to fully guarantee a 5-year contract, even though they knew every other owner was going to be mad about it. They were willing to do that to get the player. There's not many guys who are on their existing rookie contracts who will ever come close to having that type of leverage.